Well, good afternoon. My name is Roger Sabadini. Really, this is not my day. Okay, I'm just here representing the constituents of Congressional District 5, and in particular the vocal seniority group of which I'm affiliated. I'm a founding member of that group, and along with our colleagues from Sisters, Indivisible Sisters, we're here to greet the media, who are the bastions of our democracy. There they are right there. And so we would like to welcome members of the media to what we have termed the Lori Chavez-DeRemer Empty Chair Town Hall. As you can see, she should be sitting here in person. Okay, but otherwise, we have a cardboard cutout replica likeness of the congressperson. And this is not satisfactory to us. Anyway, the two groups that have sponsored this event are the Indivisible groups, Vocal Seniority, my group, and Indivisible Sisters. And this event is one of several empty chair town halls that are being held over the next few days. Actually, one was yesterday in Oregon City, and there's going to be one in Albany. Then, of course, this one here today in Bend. To point out the attention to the fact that our United States Congressperson, Lori Chavez-DeRemer, has refused to meet with us, her constituents, in an in-person, unscripted town hall kind of format. And I've been asked to read this kind of statement, okay, for the record. Anyway, this situation is disappointing and demonstrates that the representative is not doing her job in being accessible, in not being accessible and responsible to her constituents. Once they've won office, elected officials are supposed to enter into an agreement with us to communicate fully with the people in their district. Responsible elected officials should keep us apprised of what they're doing, how they're voting, and why they're voting in a particular way. And for their part, for our part, as constituents, we should offer feedback on what our elected officials are doing and why they're doing it, and make our wishes known to our representatives regarding how we would suggest that they might vote on particular issues or take positions on particular issues that are important to us, our constituents living here in Central Oregon, for example. In-person town halls are a number of ways. It's just one way in which voters can express themselves directly. It's a chance to make sure that our representatives hear clearly what we have to say to them, since letters and phone calls and Zooms are often screened by staffers, and since email updates from our representatives are only kind of a one-way street where they kind of tell us what they're thinking, and we can't tell them, give them any feedback. But town halls are an Oregon tradition, honored by elected officials for many years. And as you know, in this room, we've had the Republican and Democratic representatives alike come here to meet with us, even in this room over the past few years. You all know this, but not Representative Chavez-DeRemer. She has steadfastly refused to offer us, her constituents, that opportunity, the opportunity to speak with her directly in person, shake her hand. And we have repeatedly asked for this, an in-person unscripted town hall. And most recently in a letter sent to her, I actually was one of the signatures on that letter, sent to her on May 15th of this year. And in fact, a few of us, myself included, went to her office in Redmond to, when she was in district, asked to meet with her, to just speak with her, and to ask, to convince her to meet with us in an in-person unscripted town hall. But she did show up, but we were met with her staffer, a guy, his name is Ben Molier, I think his name is. Very nice guy, welcomed us with open arms, and very pleasant person, but I wasn't Lori. And of course, he couldn't answer all the questions that we had that we wanted to know. We needed to speak with with Lori. in person. And so we've had, she's repeatedly ignored our requests. In particular, we asked her to meet with us to schedule a town hall this week, knowing that she was, because we asked her staffer when she could be in town in the near future, and he said October, in this period in October, and said, okay, please ask her to schedule a town hall for this week. And so that's why we're doing this empty chair town hall, because we know she should be in, she's in district, she should be sitting here, not a cardboard cut out likeness of the Congress board. Anyway, so what are we going to do here today? Well, we're going to pose questions to her likeness as a poor substitute of what we would do if she was here in person. You understand? Yeah. And that's why it's a kind of political theater. It's an empty chair town hall is what we call it. And since she's not here to answer the questions in person, we've researched some of her statements, her public statements from her record. Including her voting record, which are going to form the basis of her virtual responses. And additional information is going to be provided as necessary by our fact checker persons. And at the end of this session, all of this material, including the questions and the so-called presumed answers, will be forwarded to her office. The representatives of the media present here today, you folks out there, are the audience. This is kind of a press conference type of an event. And as I said before, you are the bastions of our democracy, you, the media. You're not enemies of the people, you're friends of the people. So thank you for attending. And a press pack has been sent to you, I think, electronically. So that it contains much of the information that we are going to present today, including the Q&A part that we otherwise, would this poor substitute for having the congressperson here in person. So I'd like to introduce some of our fact checker, questioner type persons. On my immediate left is my good friend and colleague Dick Linford, who's going to read the questions that have been submitted by constituents. Then we have a substitute for Lori, the answers.
The voice of Lori.
The voice of Lori.
Poor, no, she's a good substitute, she's a wonderful person. And Gail Stadler is going to answer the questions posed by our constituents through Dick Lindbergh. And then our fact checker is going to be Sid Steiner. Okay? So without further delay, you're on board.
First of all, Lori, you're looking a little flat. I hope you agree. So I have a question here regarding climate to begin with. Scientists insist that fossil fuel consumption must be reduced greatly in order for our planet to support life, but you have voted to repeal important elements of the Biden administration's desperately overdue climate legislation. How does that serve the interests of your constituents? Louder, yes. Should I speak loud?
I'll use the mic.
Do you want to reread the question? Yeah. Did you all
You want me to read? Wow, didn't hear it. Scientists insist that fossil fuel consumption must be rapidly reduced in order for our planet to support life. But you have voted to repeal important elements of the Biden administration's desperately overdue climate legislation. How does that serve the interests of your constituents?
And Lori said, we recognize that climate is changing, but it's been changing for thousands of years.
Oh!
And what's the cost of transitioning, over the next couple of 100 years? Democrats want us to do it by what, 2035, then 2050? And who are they infringing upon? Americans, everyday hardworking Americans and business owners. That's the problem.
Let's start a few fact checks on that interesting statement from the representative. First off, which I think should be obvious to all of you, instead of the next couple 100 years to address climate change, According to a March 2019 UN General Assembly meeting and people who actually knew what they were talking about, the world has only 9 years left to prevent irreversible damage from climate change. In Congress, her anti-climate votes include H.R. 1, which would expand mining and fossil fuel production while repealing important elements of the Biden administration's desperately overdue climate legislation. She voted for H.R. 21, which would limit the drawdown of petroleum in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve until the Department of Energy submits to Congress a plan to increase the percentage of federal lands leased for oil and gas production. She voted for H.R. 1362, which would prohibit the Secretary of the Interior and the Secretary of Agriculture from issuing a moratorium on new oil and gas leases and drill permits on some federal lands. And finally, on HJ Resolution 30, a joint resolution that would have nullified a Department of Labor ruling, which allows, not requires, but allows plan fiduciaries to consider climate change and other environmental, social, and governance factors when they make investment decisions and when they exercise shareholder rights. So not banning it, just not allowing them to consider probably the most existential thing facing us at the planet today. Beyond that, she is also a member of the Conservative Climate Caucus, which has stated that it's time to, quote, stop demonizing fossil fuels. She warned in a Facebook interview that Democrats are trying to, quote, push everything through the lens of climate change, unquote, without considering the impacts on business, making her priorities quite clear.
Do you know how much money she's taken from fossil fuel companies?
I don't have that information here.
That's a good question.
Yes. You co-sponsored and voted for the Parents' Bill of Rights, which has led in some states to the censorship of history, the banning of classical American literature from our schools, and gender-based administration against the most vulnerable of young people. In the years preceding the Parents' Bill of Rights, students and school board members had already been verbally assaulted by a loud minority of parents wishing to impose their beliefs on the community. Since the legislation was proposed, groups supporting this destructive behavior have grown. Does this kind of hot-button legislation, some of which covers issues already dealt with in state and local laws, help or hurt our communities?
And Lori said, during the COVID lockdowns, the situation pulled the Band-Aid off what was happening in schools for all parents. That is one quote. And a different one, I promised Oregonians that I would stand up for parents, and I'm keeping that promise. My common sense amendments will help parents better understand the priorities of their children's schools by bringing much needed clarity to school spending decisions and simplifying the curriculum feedback process.
Well, this one actually hits very close to home. I don't know if any of you others did, but there was a school board meeting right over here in which the parental rights folks, I think it was Moms for Liberty, came and were extraordinarily disruptive, entered the halls, screamed at the school boards, and didn't have anything to propose. They were just being awful about it. And that is why we can say convincingly, and this is one small incident, and it's nothing compared to things that are happening around the country, this bill fosters a toxic relationship between educators and parents. Excuse me. Many of the proposed rights in this bill are already ensured by local and state law, like the right to view a school's budget or speak at a public school board meeting. The school board here, they listened, and it wasn't hard to hear because they were speaking in a very high volume. This bill also became a sweeping vehicle for several other GOP priorities, but failed to garner enough votes to add a sense of Congress proviso that the education department should be eliminated by the end of the calendar year. That was part of this bill that she voted for.
Too close or not close enough?
Tilted.
A little lower.
There you
Lower,
go.
lower,
Yeah,
lower, like that.
There you go.
Lower. You have been very vocal in spreading misinformation about reproductive rights, in praising the Supreme Court for overturning Roe v. Wade, and opposing military funding for service members who must travel to obtain needed abortion procedures. How does this square with your campaign ads implying that you were endorsed by Planned Parenthood, although you do not appear on any of the list of endorsements?
And Lori said, Oregon has passed extreme laws that allow abortion on demand and taxpayer-funded abortions. It's time to listen to 80% of Americans who want some level of restriction on abortions and pass legislation like the Heartbeat Bill. In a different statement, I am encouraged to see the Supreme Court overturn Roe v. Wade and return this discussion back to the American people.
In terms of endorsements from organizations involved in the issue of reproductive rights, the fact is that Representative Chavez-DeRemer has a 100% rating from National Right to Life based on her votes on legislation in 2023. The Born Alive bill that Representative Chavez-DeRemer vociferously supported promotes the unfounded claim that Democrats are in favor of procedures that would murder newborn children. This clearly is already illegal and would be abhorrent to any decent human, including abortion providers and others. The bill is widely seen as a ploy to demonize Democratic politicians and their constituents and has been a talking point for GOP candidate Donald Trump. By the way, everything that I'm saying in all of these fact checks, I have citations for everything, which I'm happy to provide to anyone who wants them.
The population of Oregon's Congressional District 5 is more than 700,000 people. 327 people voted in the 2022 midterm election, and your winning margin was 7,299 votes, or 2%. It is your responsibility to represent all of the people in CD5, including those who voted to your opponent or didn't vote. Do you pledge to work across the aisle and work with constituents who did not vote for you to support legislation that counteracts the more aggressive GOP attacks on mainstream values?
This is all we could find that Lori said about this. Quote, representing Republican women, representing Republicans is important to me. Now we can truly have some say-so for Oregonians.
Wow.
So,
Smallest.
she did promise during her campaign to aggressively address homelessness and crime while protecting gun rights and cutting taxes. So that at least is covering one side of the political divide. She said in an interview with OPB.org in April of 2022 that she does not know about the word compromise. And her initial speech on the House floor, this is from the Oregon Capital Chronicle, was short but carefully curated to include Republican campaign talking points likely to win support among her troops back home in its blue state critique. Again, the notion that she is representing everyone is belied by her words and her actions.
I have read your stated opinions about the Second Amendment, and I'm wondering whether you feel that your personal beliefs matter more than the wishes of your constituents. Many people in CD5, including a majority of voters on Measure 114, support banning assault weapons and are in favor of stronger gun control laws. We'd like to think these perspectives are considered when you vote. Are they?
And Lori said, this was on her campaign website and a couple of other places in various other iterations. Quote, The radical left wants to take away our right to bear arms. They want to ban you from protecting yourself and your family.
Well, her campaign characterized many of her constituents as the radical left. Actually, I'll limit that, on her campaign website. And as of March 22nd, 2022, she has significantly misrepresented their perspective on gun safety laws. Let's look quickly at Measure 114, the gun safety measure that Oregon voters approved in 2022. It bans the manufacture, purchase, or sale of magazines that can hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition. It requires that people take a safety course and pass a background check to get a permit to purchase firearms. It does not contain any provision for the confiscation of firearms. It passed in a statewide referendum by nearly 25,000 votes.
During your campaign, you represented yourself as a middle-of-the-road moderate, apparently to distance yourself from the destructive, divisive path the GOP had then and continued to follow since your election. Your votes on major issues have hewed to the GO party line, but your public statements do not reveal that fact. You have also steadfastly supported Donald Trump. Talk is cheap. Where, in fact, do you stand?
Here's a quote. The left doesn't want to talk about cracking down on illegal drugs, gang violence, Antifa, rioting, or looting. They want to ban you from protecting yourself and your family. They want to redefine our Constitution and Bill of Rights. Washington, D.C. radicals believe in multiculturalism, moral relativism, and that socialism just hasn't really been tried yet. They want open borders, government-funded health care, and abortion on demand. I won't stand for it. We must defend our rights.
There's way too much in there to unpack, okay, in a simple fact check, okay? So I would just like to address one thing that she said there that she has says repeatedly in her Twitter feed and other places over and over again. And that is her accusation that the Biden administration has implemented an open border policy, and that is what is causing the inflow of drugs, particularly fentanyl, into our country. Let's see what's really going on there. So, in March of 2020, the Trump administration implemented Title 42, which allowed them to turn away asylum seekers in order to prevent the spread of COVID into the U.S. So this is a pandemic-era immigration policy. That policy expired in May of 2023. The policy on asylum seekers then reverted back to Title 8, which has been in effect since 1986. You may note that was during the Reagan administration. Okay. That policy is still in effect today under the Biden administration. Title 8, the claim that the Biden administration has implemented open border policies is patently false.
The man almost certain to be the Republican nominee in the 2024 presidential election is facing 91 criminal charges, including those stemming from the illegal attempt to subvert the free and fair election of Joe Biden. He has also casually shared top secret Defense Department information with a civilian member of his Mar-a-Lago club. The Republican Party took us to the brink of a government shutdown. You have voted with the most extreme elements of the Republican Party 88% of the time and have not made a definitive statement about the GOP effort to impeach President Biden in payback for winning. Do you think this represents the views of your constituency?
Here's a statement made before some of the most recent developments. Donald Trump is a man of substance. I look forward to seeing what substance he's going to bring in 2024.
Don't we all?
Well, excuse me. So, in terms of her views on Donald Trump and his candidacy for 2024, and how this represents the wishes of her constituency. Let's make that the makeup of her constituency clear. Oregon's 5th has long been swing territory, and it shifted to the left in 2020, supporting Joe Biden 54% to 44%, after backing Hillary Clinton 48-44 in 2016. Excuse me. Chavez-DeRemer has questioned the trustworthiness of Oregon's vote by mail system, which has not been subject to widespread fraud, but has been credited with skyrocketing voter turnout in the state. After a failed vote to censure Representative Adam Schiff for serving as the lead prosecutor in Donald Trump's second impeachment trial, stemming from his actions leading up to the January 6th insurrection, Trump went on social media to denounce the 20 Republicans who voted against censure and demand that his loyalists find primary challengers for all 20. Representative Chavez-DeRemer, who was one of those 20, then changed her vote to favor censure.
Your claim to be a moderate, not in lockstep with the radicals in your party. You claim to be a moderate, not in lockstep with the radicals of your party, and yet you voted to censor Representative Adam Schiff for doing his duty as chair of the House Intelligence Committee in investigating Trump, about whom there was a plethora of information of his wrongdoings. First, how do you rationalize this vote? And do you support the baseless impeachment of Biden?
A recent statement. An impeachment inquiry is just what it sounds like, a search for facts and the truth regarding serious allegations against President Biden.
Interesting that she chooses to talk about a search for facts and truth. Sorry, I don't mean to be snarky, but it's just hard to keep a straight face on some of these things. She imports, now fact check, here we go. She supports an impeachment inquiry into President Biden, emphasizing the importance of obtaining information and being accountable to the American people. This somewhat contradicts her position on Trump, whom she supports. Following the violence in Charlottesville, Representative Chavez-DeRemer said, quote, "Leaders of both parties are failing when they allow this political violence to continue." Yet, in 2021, she posted a photo of herself wearing a "Let's Go Brandon" hat. I probably don't have to explain what that actually means. It's not exactly a peacemaking hat. And then finally, in terms of where she is along the political spectrum, despite her claims of being a moderate, she aligned herself with Mayra Flores, a Republican congressional candidate in Texas, who tweeted QAnon slogans and cast doubt on the 2020 presidential election, calling Representative Flores, candidate Flores, quote, "the future of the Republican Party." Chavez-DeRemer was endorsed by and received campaign contributions from Elise Stefanik's leadership PAC. For those of you who don't know, Stefanik is a millennial congresswoman whose profile rose late in 2019 amid her fervent defense of then President Donald Trump during his first impeachment inquiry.
Why do we continue to see an unabated flow of fentanyl in the country, and what can we do about it?
In a May 9th Twitter or X tweet, Representative Chavez-DeRemer said, "Oregon may not be a border state, but drugs, specifically fentanyl, are being periodically trafficked through. We must protect our communities from the flow of dangerous drugs by securing our southern border."
So this statement is, she repeats over and over and over again. Her Twitter feed is every third or fourth tweet is like pounding on the border and border patrol. And while she claims this is not anti-immigrant, that's clearly what she's talking about fentanyl being smuggled in by people coming illegally into the country. Let's look at what the facts say, though. And this is from an analysis published in August of this year by National Public Radio, who was interviewing officials from the government. And this quote is, "In terms of stopping the flow of fentanyl by, quote, securing the southern border, unquote, it is important to note that close to 90% of that fentanyl is seized at ports of entry, smuggled mostly by U.S. citizens as well as other travelers who are legally authorized to cross. Virtually none is seized by migrants who are seeking asylum."
There you go. Spread the word.
You have said that you will, quote, "make sure our veterans and service members are well taken care of," end of quote. But you voted for the MAGA debt default bill, H.R. 2811, which would have cut the funding for the Veterans Administration by 22%, slashing veterans' access not only to health, but to housing programs, food security, and training programs, among many others. How do you reconcile what you said with what you voted?
Well, apparently,
Sorry. No, tilt it. Tilt it. There you go, like that.
no one had asked this question because we could not find an answer to this question. And if Lori were here, she could answer it, but she's not here.
However, it's worth pointing out that, yes, she did vote for this default bill, which would have slashed funding for veterans programs by 22%, as we said. It's noteworthy that that bill passed by one vote, okay? Her vote passed that bill. Unfortunately, the Senate had more sense. Representative Chavez-DeRemer posted, then deleted from her campaign website, a statement that she, quote, "won't stand for government-funded health care," like that's the end of the quote. But government-funded health care, remember, is the VA, Medicare, Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act.
On social,
How's that? Okay, there we are, it is. On Social Security and Medicare, the question. The GOP's proposed budget for 2024 seeks to cut Social Security and Medicare. Legislation to extend Social Security programs for at least an additional 32 years has been proposed by the Democratic Representative John Larson. But repeatedly, not a single Republican member of Congress has signed on to this bill. Would you work across the aisle to support this legislation?
One little correction, that's reportedly not a single Republican has signed on. Again, no one has asked this question apparently because there was no answer that we could find.
So let's just add a little context to the whole thing. As of August 2023, 83% of Democrats, 73% of independents, and 73% of Republicans want to expand Social Security and pay for it by making the wealthy contribute more. Yet not a single Republican member of Congress had signed on to a bill expanding Social Security benefits. Instead, Republicans in Congress support cutting Social Security and ultimately ending the program as we know it. This is laid out in a budget proposal from the Republican Study Committee, the RSC, a group that counts about 70% of House Republicans as members. The RSC just released its desired 2024 budget, in which the party seeks to cut Social Security and Medicare. The RSC budget is more than just a financial statement. This is a quote. It is a statement of priorities. The party assures us in the document that that is the case. The proposed budget would effectively make cuts to Social Security by increasing the retirement age for future retirees. The document does not list what Republicans think the new retirement age should be. On Medicare, Republicans propose requiring disabled Americans to wait longer before getting benefits and turning Medicare into a, quote, premium support, unquote, system, a long-floated Republican idea that essentially turns the government program into a voucher scheme. Such a scheme would remove the guarantees for seniors to have affordable access to Medicare. And finally, the Office of the Chief Actuary of the Social Security Administration estimates that enactment of a proposed bill would extend the ability of the program to pay scheduled benefits in full and on time for an additional 32 years. In addition, because the tax provisions are not temporary, the percent of scheduled benefits that would be payable would be increased in all years after projected trust fund reserve depletion in 2066. This came in a letter from the chief actuary about Representative Larson's bill that he proposed in Congress that neither Lori or any of her colleagues are willing to support. We could keep Social Security going continuously for as long as us or our kids or our grandkids are around.
I'm somehow reminded of Barney Frank, the congressman for years, I believe from New York or Massachusetts, I can't remember which. In responding to a woman's question, he said, "Madam, what planet are you from?" And I kind of feel that's what we're dealing with here. Governance. Beginning with your campaign in November of 2022, you have continually represented yourself as a moderate representative for your CD5 constituents. But your voting record, if not your public statements, make it clear that you stand with the most extreme elements of your party almost 90% of the time. Recent events have shown what happens when a dysfunctional Republican majority is in power in the House. Everything comes to a standstill. Why should your constituents vote for you in the future, knowing that regardless of your stance, you continue to support the MAGA majority?
That's a question for another day.
Answer at this point.
But, so speaking of another day, those of us, the people, constituents of CD5 who are not present here today, can access what has transpired here by going to the Vocal Seniority YouTube channel, and our colleague Sid Snyder is going to make that available to everyone, anyone who wants to see what has happened today. But again, this was planned to be not so much of a public event because our congressperson refused to meet with us in person. It was designed to be have a kind of a press conference kind of a format feel, and that's why it was important to recognize the presence of media. We got media coverage. They've since left, and will hopefully be on the 5 o'clock news or whatever. But I want to thank you also who came in person. You didn't have to do it because it was, a media type event. So thank you so much. And I would like to thank our panelists for absolutely well-researched and well-presented question and answer period pattern. Yes, sir.
Just, I'll make it one quick thing to the folks that are here. Remember, the reason we did this was because we were trying to impress upon our representative in Congress that she needs to hear from us, okay, in a real way, okay, not these Zoom things where she controls all the questions and all the answers, and that she's got to come over on this side of the mountain sometime and talk to us, okay? And there was the letter that Roger talked about. I sent something on behalf of the Vocal Seniority in July, asking her to come during the August recess, which is the long recess. I have also asked personally, you can go to her website, if you can stomach it, and there is a place that allows you to send a message to the representative, and I would encourage each of you to go there, just type in a few words, asking her to please schedule an in-person, unscripted town hall in Deschutes County. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, one question.
It's just a comment.
Comment.
You talk about the scripted Zoom town hall.
Yeah.
Did you see her letter where she had the pie charts of the number of her constituents that supported certain positions
Right.
based on that scripted Zoom town hall?
Right.
It's unbelievable,
Yeah. Well,
infuriating.
sadly, it's believable.
Well, yeah, but it's infuriating.
It is infuriating.
Well,
So-
thank you, Connie Peterson, and thank you all. Let's all enjoy the rest of the day, but, you know, this is, you know, have a good rest of the day, and thank you very much for your attention.